The hotel front desk called my room at 3 a.m. to tell me that 3 people just asked for my room and they're coming up right now. The phone screamed in the dark, and I was already moving before I was fully awake, my hand hitting the receiver while my eyes searched the shadows of the hotel room for threats. "Sir, 3 people just demanded your room number." The front desk clerk's voice came fast and panicked. I couldn't stop them. "They're in the elevator right now, coming up. You have maybe 45 seconds. My feet hit the carpet and I was grabbing my jeans off the chair, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat. The clerk kept talking, but I'd already dropped the phone, pulling on my shoes without socks, snatching my wallet and car keys from the nightstand. The room was on the 5th floor, and I could hear the elevator machinery humming through the walls, cables pulling the car upward with 3 people inside who knew my real name and exactly which room I was hiding in. I grabbed my laptop bag and moved to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Footsteps in the hallway, but from the wrong direction. Someone was already up here, which meant they'd split up, covering both stairwells while the others came up the elevator. I spun back toward the window, my hands already working the latch. The Riverside Inn was a cheap roadside place with windows that actually opened, not like the sealed corporate hotels where you were trapped inside their climate-controlled box. Cold November air hit my face as I shoved the window up, looking down at the fire escape that I'd specifically checked when I'd arrived 3 days ago. Always check your exits. Always have a backup plan. That's what Adrian had taught me before they'd killed him, before I'd become the one running instead of the one hunting. The metal fire escape was rusted but solid, and I threw my laptop bag over my shoulder and climbed out just as I heard the distinctive ding of the elevator arriving on my floor. Voices in the hallway now, professional and clipped. "Room 512. He's in 512. Move." I was already moving down the fire escape, my shoes clanging on metal grating that sang out my position like a dinner bell. My car was parked in the back lot specifically for this scenario, facing outward for a quick exit. The cold air burned my lungs, and my hands were already numb on the frozen railing. But I took the stairs 2 at a time, my laptop bag bouncing against my hip. Behind me, I heard the window of my room slide open, and a man's voice shouting down at me to stop, that they just wanted to talk. People who just want to talk don't show up at 3 a.m. with a team. They don't bypass hotel security protocols. They don't move with the coordinated precision I was hearing in their movements. I hit the 4th floor landing and heard another window open above me. They were following down the fire escape while others were probably already heading to the ground floor to cut me off. The 3rd floor. Landing had a ladder that dropped to the parking lot below, one of those counterweighted emergency ladders that was supposed to lower slowly under a person's weight. I grabbed the release mechanism, and the ladder dropped fast, hitting the asphalt with a metallic crash that echoed across the empty lot. I didn't bother climbing down properly, just grabbed the sides and slid, the metal rails tearing through my palms and bringing blood instantly. My feet hit the ground hard enough to send shockwaves up my legs, but I was already running toward my car, a 10-year-old Camry that I'd bought for cash from a private seller using a fake ID. The key was in my hand, and I was clicking the unlock button when I saw headlights suddenly flare to life from a vehicle I hadn't noticed parked 3 spots away from mine. A black SUV with tinted windows and a reinforced front grille designed for ramming. They'd found my car. They'd been waiting for this exact scenario. I changed direction mid-stride, vaulting over a concrete barrier and heading for the street instead of the parking lot. My lungs were screaming and my hands were slick with blood from the ladder, but I could hear car doors opening behind me and footsteps hitting pavement. The street was empty at this hour, just sodium lights casting orange pools on cracked asphalt and closed businesses with steel shutters. I ran toward the 24-hour gas station I could see 2 blocks down, the only place with lights and potential witnesses. Behind me, the SUV's engine roared to life and tires squealed. They were coming after me in the vehicle, which meant they'd abandoned any pretense of this being a legitimate operation. Private investigators don't run people down in the street. These were contractors, and someone had paid them very well to find me. I cut through an alley between a closed laundromat and a tax preparation office, jumping over trash bags and dodging a shopping cart. The alley was narrow enough that the SUV couldn't follow, but I heard doors opening and more footsteps. They were on foot now, at least 2 of them, maybe more. My breath came in ragged gasps, and the cold air felt like knives in my chest. The alley opened onto another street and I burst out onto the sidewalk, just as a pair of headlights swept toward me. For a split second I thought it was another vehicle working with them, but it was just a late-night delivery truck rumbling past. I ran alongside it for half a block, using it as cover, then cut across the street toward the gas station. The fluorescent lights inside the convenience store were brutally bright after the darkness, and the clerk behind the bulletproof glass looked up from his phone with the exhausted expression of someone working the graveyard shift who'd seen everything. I stumbled to the counter, my bloody hands leaving prints on the surface. "Call 911, someone's trying to kill me." The clerk's bored expression shifted to alarm as he took in my appearance, the blood on my hands, and the wild panic in my eyes. He reached for the phone, but then his gaze moved past me to the window behind me, and his face went pale. I turned and saw the black SUV pulling into the gas station parking lot, moving slowly now, deliberately. The clerk's hand froze on the phone and I knew immediately what was happening. He wasn't going to call. Something about that SUV, or the people inside it, had convinced him that getting involved would be worse than whatever happened to me. I was on my own. I grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler and moved toward the back of the store, looking for another exit. The store was small and cramped, aisles packed with overpriced snacks and motor oil. Through the window, I could see two men getting out of the SUV, both wearing dark tactical clothing that might have been security uniforms, or might have been something else entirely. They moved like military, scanning the area with professional efficiency. The woman stayed in the vehicle, watching from the passenger seat. I found the back door near the restrooms, one of those emergency exits with an alarm bar. I hit it hard, and the alarm immediately started shrieking, but I was already outside in another alley behind the gas station. This alley ran parallel to the main street and was lined with dumpsters and loading docks. I ran past a Thai restaurant and a cell phone repair shop, both closed and dark. Behind me, I heard the emergency door crash open again and shouting voices. The alarm was still screaming, which might bring real police or might bring nothing at all in this neighborhood at this hour. I couldn't count on help. I had to assume I was alone in this. My laptop bag kept bouncing against my side, and I realized it was slowing me down, but I couldn't abandon it because it contained everything I'd gathered over the past 3 months. Every file, every piece of evidence, every connection I'd documented about the Kessler Group and what they'd done to Adrian. Without that laptop, his death meant nothing, and mine would mean even less. I spotted a commercial dumpster that had been pulled away from the wall for pickup, creating a gap maybe 2 feet wide between the metal bin and the brick building. I squeezed into the space and pulled the dumpster back toward the wall as much as I could, creating just enough shadow to hide in. The smell was overwhelming, rotting food and stale beer, but I pressed myself into the corner and tried to control my breathing. Footsteps approached, heavy boots on concrete, 2 sets of feet, moving methodically, checking doorways and behind barriers. A flashlight beam swept across the dumpster's surface, and I held my breath, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. The footsteps paused right next to my hiding spot. One of them spoke into a radio. North Alley, no visual. Might have made it to the residential area. The response came back crackling with static. Keep searching. He can't have gone far. We need him contained before sunrise. The footsteps moved on, and I waited in the dark, counting to 100 before I dared to move. My hands were throbbing from the ladder burn, and I could feel blood soaking through my shirt where I'd scraped my side going over the concrete barrier. Every instinct screamed at me to keep running, to put as much distance as possible between myself and this place, but I forced myself to think strategically. They had vehicles and coordination and resources. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and a laptop full of data that could destroy the people hunting me. Running blindly would just delay the inevitable. I needed to change the game. I pulled out my phone, a burner I'd bought 2 weeks ago, and dialed the only number I'd memorized. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, groggy and irritated. This better be life or death, Tobin. Her name was Kelsey Vance, and she was an investigative journalist with the kind of reputation that made powerful people nervous. I'd been feeding her information for weeks, small pieces of the larger puzzle, building a relationship. She's trying to get this phone call. Kelsey, it's happening. They found me. I'm in the city, near the Riverside Inn. They tried to grab me at my hotel. I heard sheets rustling and her voice became immediately sharper. Who's they? How many? I gave her the basics while watching the mouth of the alley for movement. 3 that I know of, maybe more. Professional contractors. They knew my alias, knew my room number. Someone inside the organization must have tracked my credit card. Kelsey was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her thinking. Where are you right now? Exactly? I described my location, and she cursed softly. That's a bad area. No cameras, no witnesses worth a damn. You need to get to a public place with security. I told her about the gas station clerk who'd refused to call 911, about the SUV that moved like it had official backing. She cursed again. The Kessler Group has contracts with half the private security firms in the state. If they put out word you're a fugitive or a threat, every rent-a-cop in the city will be looking for you. You need to get to my office. We'll go live with what we have. It's not the full story, but it'll be enough to make you too visible to disappear quietly. Her office was downtown, at least 20 minutes away by car, and I had no car. I'd have to walk or steal a vehicle or somehow get an Uber without leaving a digital trail. Every option felt impossible. I asked Kelsey if she could come get me, but she explained that if they were tracking me through digital means, they were probably monitoring everyone in my contact list. Her showing up in this area at 3 a.m. would confirm their suspicions about what I'd been doing. We need to be smart about this. Get to a main street, somewhere with traffic and lights. Find a way downtown that doesn't involve your credit card or phone. I'll have someone meet you. She paused. And Tobin, whatever you do, don't let them get that laptop. If they destroy what's on it, we've got nothing. I promised her I'd protect the laptop and ended the call, then immediately powered down the phone and removed the battery. If they were tracking me electronically, every second that phone was active was a beacon. I tucked the pieces into different pockets and prepared to move. I climbed out from behind the dumpster and moved deeper into the alley system, staying parallel to the main street but using the back routes. The sky was still dark, but had that quality that suggested dawn was coming in a few hours. I needed to be somewhere safe and public by then. The residential area Kelsey had mentioned was ahead, rows of modest homes with chain-link fences and cars parked on the street. I could see lights on in a few windows, early risers or people who'd never gone to bed. I was debating which street to take when I heard the SUV engine again, cruising slowly down the street ahead. They were doing a grid search, systematically covering every block. I backtracked and took a parallel route, cutting through someone's backyard and hoping no dogs would alert. The backyard belonged to a small house with a detached garage. Through the garage window, I could see an old motorcycle covered with a tarp. I tried the side door and found it unlocked. Small-town trust that seemed dangerously naive, until I reminded myself I was the one breaking into garages at 3 a.m. The motorcycle was a vintage dirt bike, maybe 250cc, with keys hanging on a hook by the door. I grabbed them and wheeled the bike outside, my conscience briefly protesting before survival instinct crushed it. I'd mail the owner cash later if I survived. I kicked the starter and the engine caught on the third try, roaring to life with a noise that seemed catastrophically loud in the quiet neighborhood. Lights came on in the house and I was already moving, releasing the clutch and shooting out of the driveway onto the street. Behind me I heard shouting and the SUV's engine revving. I cranked the throttle and the bike shot forward, weaving between parked cars. The SUV couldn't match my maneuverability through the residential streets, but it was faster in straight lines. I ran 2 stop signs and cut through a park, the bike's knobby tires tearing up grass and leaving deep gouges. My laptop bag bounced wildly, and I had to hold it with one hand while steering with the other, a recipe for disaster. But I had no choice. The SUV tried to follow through the park, but got stuck on a decorative boulder, buying me precious seconds. I emerged onto a larger boulevard and opened the throttle completely, the bike screaming as I pushed it to its limits. The downtown skyline was visible ahead, glass towers reflecting the city lights. I aimed for the tallest cluster of buildings where Kelsey's newspaper office was located. The streets here had more traffic even at this hour, delivery trucks and shift workers heading home. I wove between them, running red lights and using the bike's size to slip through gaps no car could manage. Behind me, the SUV was still pursuing, but they were falling back, unable to match my pace through the denser traffic. I started to believe I might actually make it. That belief lasted exactly 10 seconds before a police cruiser appeared from a side street, lights flashing, pulling behind me with sirens blaring. My first instinct was relief, because police meant safety and witnesses, but then I remembered what Kelsey had said about the Kessler Group's connections. If they'd reported the bike stolen, if they'd fed the cops a story about me being dangerous, the police wouldn't be my salvation. They'd be another obstacle. I had to make a choice in the split second before the cruiser got close enough to force me to stop. I chose to keep running. I took a hard right down a one-way street going the wrong direction, praying no cars were coming the other way. The cruiser followed, and the SUV joined from another angle, now both of them chasing me through the city streets. This was escalating beyond anything I'd prepared for. I cut into an underground parking garage, the bike's engine echoing off concrete walls as I descended into the structure. The cruiser tried to follow, but its lights and sirens gave me constant updates on its position. I went down 3 levels, and then killed the bike's engine, coasting silently into a spot between 2 vans. The cruiser drove past, searching. I waited in the dark, listening to its engine fade. The SUV hadn't followed into the garage, which meant they were probably covering the exits. I was trapped, unless I could find another way out. I left the bike and moved on foot, carrying my laptop bag and looking for stairs or service elevators. The parking garage connected to an office building, and I found an access door that opened into a lobby. Security desk was empty, just a sign-in sheet and a camera pointed at the entrance. I avoided the camera's sightline and found the building directory. Kelsey's newspaper, the Metro Sentinel, was on the 9th floor of a building 6 blocks away. I needed to get there without going back outside where the police and the SUV were waiting. I remembered something Adrian had taught me about downtown buildings during one of our long surveillance shifts. The old commercial district had been built when city blocks were planned as integrated units. Many buildings shared basements and service tunnels, connections that had existed since the 1950s and were often forgotten by modern security. If I could find those tunnels, I could move between buildings without surfacing. The parking garage had a maintenance level below the regular floors, accessed by a freight elevator. I took it down and emerged into a maze of mechanical rooms and storage areas. Pipes ran along the ceiling and the air smelled like old concrete and machine oil. I found what I was looking for after 10 minutes of searching, a service tunnel marked with faded signs indicating it led to the adjacent building. The tunnel was narrow and dark, lit by bare bulbs every 20 feet. I moved through it quickly, my footsteps echoing. Halfway through, I heard voices ahead and froze. Someone else was in the tunnel system. The voices were getting closer. 2 men having a conversation about basketball scores. Maintenance workers, probably doing overnight rounds. I pressed myself against the wall and let them pass. 2 guys in coveralls carrying toolboxes who didn't even glance in my direction. After they were gone, I continued until I found another freight elevator. This one took me up to the basement of a different building. The directory showed I was now 3 blocks closer to Kelsey's office. 3 more tunnel connections, and I'd be there. The tunnel system was like a forgotten underground city, and I navigated it using old signs and intuition. Some sections were clean and well lit, part of active building infrastructure. Others were abandoned, filled with broken equipment and graffiti from decades past. I emerged in the sub-basement of the building next to the Metro Sentinel's tower. One more connection and I'd be there, but this tunnel was blocked by a locked gate. Through the bars I could see the passage continuing into darkness, but the padlock was industrial grade and new, suggesting someone had sealed this route recently. I was debating breaking through when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw a security guard approaching, hand on his radio. "Sir, you can't be down here. This is a restricted area." I raised my hands, showing I wasn't a threat, and tried to explain that I was meeting someone in the building. The guard wasn't buying it, his hand moving closer to his radio trigger. Before he could call it in, I heard more footsteps from the direction I'd come. Multiple sets, moving fast. The guard heard them too, and his expression changed from annoyed to alert. He pulled his radio and was about to speak when 3 figures emerged from the tunnel. The 2 men and the woman from the hotel, all of them armed with pistols they made no attempt to hide. The guard's eyes went wide and he was reaching for his own weapon when the woman shot him. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, and the guard crumpled against the wall, clutching his leg and screaming. The woman looked at me with cold calculation. "You've been very inconvenient, Mr. Reeves. We need to have a conversation about what you think you know." I ran. The only direction available was back the way I'd come, deeper into the tunnel system. Bullets sparked off the concrete around me, and I heard them shouting for me to stop. The tunnels branched, and I took random turns, no longer navigating with any plan, just trying to create distance. My laptop bag kept bouncing, and I clutched it tighter, protecting it even as I ran. Behind me I could hear them splitting up, covering different routes. They knew these tunnels, had probably scouted them, before tonight. I was trapped in a maze with hunters who'd been preparing for this. Every turn might lead to a dead end, or another locked gate. The panic that I'd been holding back finally broke through, and I felt it rising in my throat like bile. I found a maintenance room and ducked inside, closing the door quietly. The room was full of electrical panels and old equipment, barely enough space to move. I wedged myself behind a transformer box and tried to catch my breath. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it would burst, and my hands were shaking uncontrollably. The gunshot kept replaying in my head. The guard's scream. They'd shot him without hesitation, which meant they weren't worried about consequences. Either they had immunity, or they'd already decided that everyone involved tonight was disposable. I pulled out my laptop and powered it on. The screen's glow painfully bright in the dark room. If they caught me, I needed to make sure the data survived somehow. I had maybe 2 minutes before they checked this room. I connected to an open Wi-Fi network I'd used before, and started uploading the most critical files to the encrypted cloud storage Kelsey had set up. The progress bar crawled forward with agonizing slowness. 50%, 60, footsteps outside the door, 75%. The door handle started to turn, 90%. The door opened, and light flooded in, silhouetting one of the men from the SUV. He saw me immediately and raised his weapon. I hit the final upload button and slammed the laptop shut. The files were safe now, backed up and accessible to Kelsey even if they destroyed the laptop and me with it. The man spoke into his radio. Found him. Service level, maintenance room 3. Bring the woman. He kept his gun trained on me while we waited for the others to arrive. His face was expressionless, professional. Not angry, not excited, just doing a job. That somehow made it worse. When the woman arrived, she smiled at me with something that might have been respect. "You uploaded the files, didn't you? Very smart. But you should know we've been monitoring that cloud account for weeks. Everything you just uploaded went to us first, then to your journalist friend. We'll have it scrubbed before she can do anything with it." My stomach dropped as I realized she was telling the truth. The cloud storage I thought was secure had been compromised. Every precaution I'd taken, every careful step, had been anticipated. They'd been 3 moves ahead the entire time. The woman gestured for me to stand. Her 2 companions flanked her, weapons ready. "We're going to walk out of here very quietly. You're going to come with us and answer some questions about Adrian Murphy and what he told you before his accident." The word accident dripped with mockery. Adrian had been forced off a mountain road 6 months ago, his car plunging 300 feet into a ravine. The police ruled it an accident, blamed icy conditions and excessive speed. But Adrian had been the most careful driver I'd ever known, and he'd called me 2 hours before he died to tell me he'd found proof of what the Kessler Group was doing. He'd never gotten the chance to share it. The woman saw the rage on my face and her smile widened. "That's right, we erased him and we'll erase you, unless you cooperate." I stood slowly, my mind racing through options. They had the files. They had me cornered. They had weapons and training and resources. All I had was desperation and the knowledge that if I went with them, I'd end up like Adrian, which meant I had nothing to lose by fighting. I threw the laptop at the woman's face and dove past her toward the door. She deflected it easily, but the moment of disruption was enough. I was through the door and running before they could react. Gunfire erupted behind me and something hot grazed my shoulder. The pain was white-hot and immediate, but I kept running, zigzagging through the tunnels. Behind me I heard them pursuing, shouting coordinates and directions to each other. They were hurting me somewhere specific, I realized. Every turn I took seemed to be the one they wanted. The tunnel opened into a large underground chamber, some kind of old utility station with machinery that hadn't run in decades. Catwalks crossed overhead and water dripped from pipes. It was a dead end. I spun around and they were already there, blocking the only exit. All 3 of them. weapons raised. The woman stepped forward. "This is over, Mr. Reeves. You fought well, but you were never going to win." I backed up against the far wall, my shoulder throbbing and blood soaking my shirt. My laptop bag was gone, dropped somewhere in the tunnels. Everything I'd gathered, all the proof, meaningless now. The woman raised her weapon, taking careful aim at my center mass. "Any last words?" Before I could answer, the chamber flooded with light and voices shouted from above. "Police! Drop your weapons!" I looked up and saw figures on the catwalks, at least a dozen of them, all armed and wearing tactical gear. The woman and her companions froze, calculating odds. One of them started to raise their weapon and was immediately cut down by precise fire from above. The other man dropped his gun and raised his hands. The woman stared at me with pure hatred, then slowly lowered her weapon and placed it on the ground. The tactical team swarmed down, securing the contractors and checking me for injuries. I couldn't process what was happening. These weren't regular police. Their gear was federal, marked with DEA and FBI insignia. A man in a suit descended the stairs from the catwalk, picking his way carefully through the old machinery. He was in his 50s with gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in federal law enforcement. "Mr. Reeves, I'm Special Agent Coleman with the FBI. We've been investigating the Kessler Group for 18 months. Your friend Adrian Murphy was working with us as a confidential informant before his death." The ground felt like it was tilting beneath me. Adrian had been working with the FBI? He'd never mentioned it, never given any indication. Coleman saw my confusion and continued. "Adrian couldn't tell you because it would have put you at risk. But after his death, we continued monitoring the people he'd been investigating. When you started asking questions and gathering evidence, we knew you'd become a target. We've been tracking you for the past month, letting the Kessler contractors lead us to their network." I felt rage building in my chest, hot and choking. "You knew they were coming for me tonight? You let them chase me? Let them shoot at me? Used me as bait?" Coleman had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We needed them to expose themselves, to make moves that we could document and prosecute. If we'd intervened earlier, they would have scattered, and we'd have lost our chance. I know it doesn't seem fair, but you helped us break a case that's going to bring down one of the largest corporate fraud rings in the country." "Fair?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the chamber. "Adrian is dead. That security guard upstairs was shot. I've been running for my life for 3 months. Coleman nodded slowly. "Adrian's death was the motivation for this entire investigation. We're going to make sure the people responsible pay for it, and that guard is already in surgery. He'll survive." The woman they'd arrested, the one who'd been hunting me all night, started laughing, a cold, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "You think this ends anything? The Kessler Group has connections in every major law enforcement agency. Prosecutors, judges, politicians. You'll arrest us and we'll be out in 48 hours. Coleman walked over to her, his expression hard. "Not this time. We've been building this case with parallel construction, keeping every piece of evidence away from anyone who might be compromised. The prosecutor we're working with is clean and motivated. You're going away for a very long time." The woman's confidence faltered just slightly, and I saw real fear flash across her face for the first time. EMTs arrived and started treating my shoulder wound. The bullet had grazed the muscle but hadn't hit anything vital. They bandaged it and gave me something for the pain while Coleman explained what happened next. I'd need to give a formal statement, probably testify at trial. The Kessler Group's leadership would be arrested within hours, their assets frozen, their operations shut down. The evidence Adrian had gathered, combined with what the FBI had collected and what I'd documented, painted a picture of systematic fraud that had stolen millions from investors and pension funds. Coleman pulled out his phone and showed me photos of people being arrested across the city. The CEO of Kessler Group in handcuffs on his lawn, board members led from their offices. The scope was massive, but it didn't bring Adrian back. It didn't erase the 3 months I'd spent running and hiding and terrified. It didn't undo the trauma of being hunted through the streets like an animal. Coleman seemed to understand what I was thinking. "I know this doesn't fix what you've lost. Nothing can. But you finished what Adrian started. He'd want you to know that. I wasn't sure Adrian would want me to know anything. He'd kept his FBI cooperation secret, had let me walk into danger without warning me. Maybe he'd been trying to protect me, or maybe he just hadn't trusted me with the truth. I'd never know now. All I knew was that I was alive, bleeding and exhausted and traumatized, but alive. And the people who'd killed my friend were finally going to face consequences. They took me to a federal building downtown where I spent 6 hours giving my statement. Every detail of the past 3 months, every piece of evidence I'd gathered, every interaction with the Kessler contractors. Kelsey Vance showed up around noon, having been briefed by the FBI about the operation. She looked simultaneously relieved that I was safe and furious that the FBI had used me without my knowledge. "We're still running the story," she told me. "Your statement, the arrests, all of it. This is going to be front page for weeks." I asked about the cloud storage I'd uploaded to, whether they'd really compromised it. Kelsey shook her head. "They were bluffing. The files uploaded cleanly, and I've already started verifying them. Everything Adrian suspected was true. The Kessler Group was running a Ponzi scheme that makes Madoff look small time. The trial took 14 months to reach verdict. I testified for 3 days, walking the jury through everything I'd discovered and everything that had happened that night. The defense tried to paint me as a conspiracy theorist who'd misinterpreted legitimate business practices, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury convicted on all counts. The CEO got 30 years. The woman who'd hunted me, whose name I learned was Sylvia Granger, got 25. The 2 men with her got 15 each. Dozens of other Kessler employees received sentences ranging from probation to a decade behind bars. The company's assets were liquidated and used to compensate victims. I moved to a different city after the trial, started a new job with a different name. Not hiding this time, just trying to build a life that wasn't defined by what had happened. I still wake up sometimes at 3 a.m., heart pounding, convinced I hear footsteps in the hall. The therapist says that's normal, that trauma doesn't follow a timeline. Some nights I think about Adrian and wonder if he'd be proud of what I did or angry that I'd put myself at risk. Mostly I think about that hotel phone call, how close I came to not answering it, to being grabbed in my room with no chance to run. I think about Damien, the night clerk who'd risked his job to warn me, and I sent him money anonymously because I couldn't thank him directly without potentially putting him at risk. I think about the motorcycle I stole and the owner who I repaid with interest and an anonymous note explaining why. I think about the security guard who took a bullet and eventually recovered but quit his job because he couldn't handle the trauma. And I think about how justice, when it finally comes, never feels quite as satisfying as you imagine it will. The bad guys went to prison, the stolen money got recovered, the truth came out, but Adrian was still dead, and I was still damaged, and victory tasted like ashes mixed with relief. 2 years later, I received a letter from Sylvia Granger in prison, asking to meet. I threw it away without reading past the first line. Some conversations aren't worth having. Some closure isn't real closure. Adrian had taught me that the hard way. In the end, I survived because a night clerk made a phone call and federal agents decided I was worth saving, even if only as bait. I survived because I ran when I should have, fought when I had to, and got lucky when luck was all I had left. That's not heroism. It's just the messy, complicated reality of staying alive when powerful people want you dead. The hotel phone still haunts me, though. That shrill ring in the darkness. 3 people asking for my room. 45 seconds to decide whether to trust a stranger's warning. Everything that came after hinged on that single moment. That choice to believe danger was real even before I could see it. Now I answer every phone call, no matter the hour, because you never know when someone might be trying to save your life. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.